We're in the bar. Good place to go, right? And over there is the cutest one about to fall off his stool. And he needs some help. Let me go stick this umbilical cord to him and help that boy. And I do. And we are totally, completely, madly in love. Right? This is my relief. Pain, I search for relief, and I attach myself to the alcoholic. What happens? There is very negative results to that attachment, right? And I return to pain. Squirrel cage. Some of you in this room have recently left your alcoholic. You're happy and contented today. You know what you're going to go attach your umbilical cord to? Trust me, I've had eons and eons to study this stuff. I've had major alcoholics and minor alcoholics in my life. I've got this umbilical cord today that's loose. Today, as we speak. Guess what I'm looking for? I ain't going to church. I ain't going to any social events. I'm in open AA meetings. Are you single, honey? Now that's just a joke, okay? So most of us have to accept the fact that we are powerless. One of our great books is the Al-Anon's One Day at a Time book. It is a magnificent study on alcoholism and how we can live with alcoholism, whether there's sobriety in the home or not. It's a great, great book. I was doing a little study one time and got this book and went to the back of the book to look up powerlessness. It is not in our book. Surrender is not in the index of that One Day at a Time book. Defeat is not in the index of our One Day at a Time book. Our major, first, only good book. Why do you think not? We're Al-Anons. Are y'all defeated? No. Are you powerless? Why, no. Do you need to surrender? Of course not. I still got plan E, F, and G, and H, and though, I can make this happen. Have y'all ever been to an assembly meeting? How many people in there know best? All of them. All of them. Can we admit to anything about powerlessness or defeat or surrender? No, we can't. It's not in our makeup. We can handle this situation. I just need to explain to him a better way this time. I need to manipulate a different thing this time. That's all I need to do. If I can just get it over to him. If I just explain it to him so his thick head can penetrate the pain and agony that I'm in, he will not want to inflict that on me. And isn't that right? And I'm certainly not powerless. So I go back, and I go back, and I go back, and I go back. I'm a nagging, as Lois said, and I'm manipulating, and I'm carrying on, and I'm an idiot. I'm a nut. I'm crazed. I go to the bars hunting him. I throw over tables. I drag him out. I drag the kids in. I show him the pain on these children. Take the dog in. I do everything to get him to come home, if he would just come home. He gets pretty sick of that, and after a while, they get pretty sick of me, and floor bouncers are throwing me out of bars. Not him. They're throwing me out of bars. I'm barred from the bars because I cause so much confusion out there. And I just can't understand it. I can't understand it. People are backing off of me like crazy. I can't understand it. What's the deal? What is the deal? Because we think we know best and we can handle this, and we need to change this. And you do that until you're just beat into a bloody pulp. That's the only way that you really start doing this. Now, I talk about two kind of Al-Anons. There's the Al-Anon of my type. I don't know exactly how to describe that, except I know the Al-Anon of my type, and I know the Al-Anon of the other type. My type is, I came in defeated. I came in this program with 2 black eyes and a busted lip, and nothing spiritually, mentally, physically left of me. A hollow person, and didn't want anything in there. I just wanted to get some way to stop this madness. And what made me ever come here has to be a miracle, because I don't ask nobody for help. Do you hear me? I don't need your help. Back off. Back off from me. Anger just firing out of me. So for me to come here and say, what's going on, is a tremendous thing. I love what Winnie Eddy used to say. She said in her talk forever, if you don't have Winnie Eddy's tape, get George to give you one. It is incredible. She's gone up to they say, the big meeting in the sky, if she made it. And she says she gets lost. She's looking for something and she gets lost. She's driving around, so she pulls in a filling station and she says, where are you located? It made perfect sense to me. There are Al-Anons who come in, which I'm not that type, who come into the program with their husbands and are not particularly happy to be here, who have had that one husband only. They got married, very happy. He wasn't drinking, and as time progressed, the drinking got a little worse, and then their sickness pops up and on and on and on. So a lot of this is of my type, that Skid Row Al-Anon, if you will. I mean, I was out in the bars, the worst bar that was available. I was out there. I'm not an alcoholic. I drank a lot. I drank because that's with the bar, that's where you are, and that's what you're supposed to do. I found out that I have a lot of feelings exactly like the alcoholic. Lynette and I were talking about that yesterday. But when I say I'm in fear. When an alcoholic says that, they're in complete, total terror, because their feelings are magnified 100% to mine. It took me a long, long time to ever get that concept. And newcomers, you must, and I'm going to say must, I got the podium, okay? You must go to open AA meetings. If you do not go to open AA meetings, you do not have a well-rounded program. It's just that simple. You will never understand the disease of alcoholism if you don't go and listen to sober alcoholics talk, because they tell you what they were like when they were drinking. I believed these total, complete strangers. I did not believe my husband. Now, figure that one. But they were saying what they used to be like when they were drunk, and it was going on in my home right then and there. And then it gave me some understanding of the disease of alcoholism, and eventually some compassion, and eventually some love and some reason to start working. Also, in sobriety, I married a sober member of AA. I had to go and listen with new ears, because sobriety, there's still alcoholism. I used to say on a pretty continuous basis from the podium when I was talking, every now and then alcoholism rears its ugly head in my family, and I would talk about, what was going on. Did that for years. One Sunday, Jim comes in. He's in the kitchen, and I'm in a movie. He's in the kitchen. He comes in there, and he looks at me, and he said, "Listen, Missy, you say from time to time from that podium that alcoholism rears its ugly head. I want you to know, from time to time, Al-Anonism rears its ugly head." Turn around and go back to the kitchen. What do you think went through that man's mind? I mean, I've been watching this movie for 2 hours, and he's in there cooking. What went through his mind that made him zip into the living room? "Listen, Missy." It's just like... And he is absolutely on the mark. In the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, when it's describing the disease of alcoholism, it says that alcoholics get restless, irritable, and discontented, doesn't it? And they get a little weird. Our opening says that we have distorted thinking. Do you hear this? It's our own literature written by us. I don't know who was the traitor, but let me tell you. We have distorted thinking, and we try to force solutions without knowing it. And we become irritable without knowing it. Now, if you get me and him, irritable and restless over here, and me with distorted thinking, we could have some stuff at my house in sobriety. So step one is for the drinking, obviously, but it's also for sobriety and our serenity also. It's a lifelong thing. And I think it's very curious that we don't have powerless, defeated, or surrender in our one day at a time book. It's incredible. I was asked one time to talk for an hour at this convention. They said, I'd like for you to talk about letting go. Letting go. An hour? I don't know how to let go. And I'm just thinking, you talk about nervous wreck. What am I going to talk about letting go for an hour? I don't have a clue. And I'm just shaking. They paid my plane ticket, and you think, I'm going to have to give them their money back. I don't have anything to say about this. And just as I was, sweating bullets, all of a sudden it just kind of fell into place. It was the most simplest theme to talk about. You don't have to let go if you don't grab hold. Now, isn't that simple? But I grab hold. I need to grab hold. Why? Because I'm hurting. I have pain. So I need to get relief from that pain. So I'm going to grab hold of this alcoholic and explain to him, drunk or sober, how his actions are not in my itinerary. You need to change so that I'm going to feel okay. My motherhood, I've got 2 alcoholic children and a stepdaughter that's an alcoholic. And a stepson, but I don't have anything to do with his life, so I really talk about the 3. When they were children, I thought, I am a mother. I do have power and I have rights over these kids because I am their mother. Now, anybody knows that. It's a very simple thing. My daughter turned a teenager and was a blossoming alcoholic. And you talk about powerless at a depth that you just did not know existed. It's if you are a mother of an alcoholic. There is something that happens there that did not happen with me with the husband. And to admit that I am powerless over my children, it's been the hardest. And I'm saying that present tense. The hardest. Because I'm their mother. The guilt comes, the shame comes, the shoulds come, the ought to shoulds. I wish I'd done that. I should have done this. Why don't you do that? Well, maybe I can help them do this. And it's a nightmare. Surrendering as a mother. Surrendering as a wife. What about surrendering as a child? What about parents? Whether they be alcoholic or whether they be normal people. How do we surrender to them? They're our parents. How do you do that? They're supposed to tell you what to do. You're supposed to respect them. That's what the Scripture says. Respect your parents. Everybody knows that you respect them. What if they're not doing respectable acts? What do you do then? What if your mama don't like you and shows it? How are you powerless over that? What about the boss? You have to work. There's a young lady we were just talking about last night. One of my sponsorees just started crying last night. Kay was crying. A young girl that she has sponsored for 8 or 9 years came in here, no education, living with her parents, both of them alcoholics, had a little kid, just in a terrible shape. Today she's an assistant manager of a store, and she has to work today. And she did not want, she put in for this a long time ago, to be off. And she's powerless over this. She can't walk off. What is she going to do? It was suggested she get a resume put together. Her talents are such that she doesn't have to be treated that way. Now, isn't that a simple solution? The simple solution is you're powerless over this day, but you do have some options. And that's what we have to learn here. I learned the powerlessness over the alcoholism mainly from Jack Clater, my sponsor's husband, and Johnny Brooks, and Bedford Rayleigh. Those three men were my mentors on alcoholism. And I questioned them hour after hour. I sat at their feet for hours talking to them about alcoholism, what they went through and what they were doing. And I could surrender to the disease of alcoholism because I knew these men and respected them. Now, I didn't respect my alcoholic, didn't believe a word he said, but I did these men. And eventually, the scales of the delusions of alcoholism were lifted from my eyes, and I could see this alcoholic suffering. I'll never forget the first time I ever saw it. He told me that he was going to go somewhere and be back in a few minutes. Well, he came in like that night, drunk. And he came in and he looked at me and he said, "I'm really sorry." And then he kind of ducked his head, and then he came back up. It was like a different human being. He started screaming and yelling at me, and it was all my fault, and, doing the game that they do. And I sat back and thought, isn't this interesting? I saw it instead of reacting to it. There are some pages in here that are really, really great, and I think for us are perfect. I'm going to read you my first one first. Which one, and some of y'all can tell, what page am I going to read first?
July 1st.
Did you hear how many people said that? July 1st. Anybody that I sponsor, they sponsor, or they sponsor, or they sponsor, or even thought about it or was in the room with them, know July 1st is the best piece of information that we have about anything. Now listen to the words. This is a solution. This I learned in Al-Anon, says a member at a meeting, that the man I married cannot be the source of my happiness or my sorrow. The gift of life is personally his, Lynette. His life belongs to him to enjoy or to destroy as each of us wishes. I see him angry. Must I be? He is hostile. Must I be? Am I faithless to my marriage vows when I achieve a bit of self-confidence while he continues to suffer the pains of self-doubt? I'm not his guide, his master, or keeper. We're individuals and must each find our lonely way to our goals. My sources of comfort and strength he refuses to share with me. I have learned through bitter experience that it is fruitless to offer them. Adjusting myself to things as they are and being able to love without trying to interfere with or control anyone else, however close to me, that is what I search for and can find in Al-Anon. The learning is sometimes painful. The reward is life itself, rich, full, and serene. If thou attend to thyself and to God, thou wilt be little moved by what thou perceivest outside of thee. Isn't that magnificent? Every time I have trouble with this husband, this is what I was told to read. Read. My daughter got 15. She started acting funny and crazy and weird. And as a mother, I'm making her shape up, telling her to do this. You're grounded. She was grounded most of the year 16. And we began to fight, and we began to have trouble and carry on, and it was terrible. And then she'd be sniffing. There's some seats right over here, honey. Come up here front, sit right down here so I can watch. Everybody stop while the latecomer comes in here. There's plenty of chairs over here. Sit down. I discovered that she was drinking. I discovered that I couldn't stop her drinking. And it was getting worse and worse and worse. We started fighting. She started screaming how much she hated me. I'll never will forget those words. I hate you. I hate you, screaming. I found myself straddled to her one day with my knees on her shoulders, explaining to her. And it gets heavier and it gets worse. And you see, I was in Al-Anon for a long time when this started with my daughter, 7, 8, 9 years. I had listened to sober alcoholics, women, talk from the podium about Alcoholics Anonymous, and I knew what she was going to go through if she drank. And I was not going to have my daughter go through that, don't you know? We were going to find a different way. And so I explained to her, and we fought, and the ripping and the tearing of emotions and the hatred and the absolute disgust of some of the things I saw and heard just started hardening my heart. I didn't like my kid. I didn't want my kid around me. It was just constant pain, constant agony, just stuff all the time, just stuff. And it gets so heavy and you feel so guilty that you're feeling this way. Who are you going to tell that you can't stand your own kid? You can't tell that. You're a mother. You can't do it. So you get heavier and heavier and heavier till I wound up, straddled her one day, and beat the crap out of her. Then I turned myself into my sponsor. And we discussed the disease of alcoholism. She said, why don't you pull this out and read this? So she pulled this out, and here we go. This I learned in Al-Anon, says a member at a meeting, that my daughter cannot be the source of my happiness or my sorrow. The gift of life is personally mine, as hers belongs to her, to enjoy or destroy as each of us wishes. I see her angry. Must I be? I see her hostile. Must I be? Am I being faithless to my motherhood when I achieve a bit of self-confidence while she continues to suffer the pains of self-doubt? I'm not her guide, her master, or her keeper. We are individuals and must each find our lonely way to our goals. My sources of comfort and strength she refuses to share with me. I've learned through bitter experience that it is fruitless to offer them to her. Adjusting myself to things as they are and being able to love without trying to interfere with or control anyone else, however close to me. That is what I search for and can find in Al-Anon. The learning is sometimes painful. The reward in life itself is rich, full, and serene. And if you're a mother or a father here, you know what I'm talking about. It's tough. A few years later, my son, they called me from school, my 11-year-old son, they'd found him in a closet at school with some other guys sniffing Pam through a paper towel holder. Pam? Pam? What in the world was he sniffing Pam for? And then as I was going to get him, I thought, that's right, his little buddy his mother keeps using a lot of Pam, and he keeps borrowing my Pam. I'd buy it, and he'd borrow it, and then never pay it back. And I'm thinking, oh, she's a selfish woman, borrowing my stuff and never paying me back. I picked him up, and I took him to the doctor, and we did all this stuff, and took him home, and I said to him, son, why did you do that? He said to me, Mama, I like the way it makes me feel. Well, you know, my stomach just hit the floor because I've been in enough open AA meetings and heard enough members of Alcoholics Anonymous stand up and say they drank because they liked the way it made them feel. It changed their perception of reality. And they, as the big book says, are in full flight from reality. And I thought, well, I got to do something about this. Now, this is my son. So I get in high gear. I'm going to put him in the boys' ranch. I'm going to move down there. A friend of mine had parents down there. I could nurse down there. And I just had it all set up, what I was going to do to help this boy. He was not going to become an alcoholic. Do you hear me? He was 11. I could do something. Went home one day, he wasn't there. Looked for him, couldn't find him. Looked everywhere for him, couldn't find him. Got panicked. He looked everywhere, couldn't find him for about 48 hours. His drunk daddy had come got him. He called his daddy, and they'd talked, and he come got him and hid him. My son called me and said, I'm okay, I'm with Daddy, and I want to stay with him. Bye, and hung up. Well, let me tell you, that ungrateful little snot. I went crazy, and I went over to my sponsor house, and she said, why don't we read this? This I learned in Al-Anon, says a member of a meeting, that my son cannot be the source of my happiness nor my sorrow. Surrender. Step one, accepting it. It says, acceptance does not mean submission to a degrading situation. It means accepting the fact of a situation and then deciding what to do about it. That's a big difference to me. Big difference. My daughter got sober. My daughter got sober 14 years ago. She met a young alcoholic getting sober on AA campus, and they fell in love, and they got pregnant, then they got married, and then they got divorced, and she had a delightful little girl, Sade, my granddaughter, and she moved out to where I'm living now, California, and Jim and I helped raise this kid. And she would go back and see her daddy from time to time. And one summer, about 4 years ago, she went to see her daddy, and then I discovered through a phone call with her, she wasn't coming back. Her daddy lives in Vermont, the East Coast, and we live on the West Coast. And she had been, I took her to school, or Jim took her to school every morning. Jim went to school and carved pumpkins at Halloween and was Santa Claus and was the Easter Bunny. And I went and helped the mother thing because I could, my daughter couldn't. We were so involved in her life, and I found out, accidentally, she wasn't coming back. And I was devastated, and I was pissed. Shortly thereafter, my daughter celebrated her 10 years of sobriety, and we gave her a wonderful party. We had a great big party, and a lot of people came, and she was very active in AA. She explained to me that it was very difficult for her to give up this child, but she just knew that she was in a place where she couldn't keep her. Wonderful party, all of her sponsorees there, her sponsor was there. She's going to meetings, she's on committees, very busy. It was 3 weeks later I got a call that she had tried to commit suicide, sober. I had some feelings that something was wrong, but I had no idea this was happening. So I put her in a hospital, and the psychiatry helped. I was just talking to somebody who works in mental health. As I told you, I had such a bad feeling about psychiatrists for so many years. And God always gives you if you have a lot of things you need to learn, God gives you the lesson. Be careful. And the doctor told me that she suffered from 2 illnesses. One was alcoholism, and the other was depression. And that she had a mental illness called depression. Well, I just got fighting mad. Now, I'm proud my daughter's an alcoholic. I mean, that's proud. But mentally ill, I was just fighting mad. So we had a long struggle there about depression and some medications they wanted to put her on and lots of things. She had tried to commit suicide when she was drunk. And I kind of just blew that one off because it was, the drunkenness. But this was sober. And I had to make a decision whether I was going to live under the threat of suicide with my daughter. Am I going to watch her? Am I going to have fear come up every time she has a bad day? Am I going to be afraid when she loses a job? If she has a flat tire, am I going to get fearful? Am I going to live under this illness? And it was so heavy, I couldn't handle it. So I flew to Austin, where my sponsor lives now, and talked to her. She said, why don't we read this? And I read this. The gift of life is personally mine, as her life belongs to her, to enjoy or destroy as each of us wishes. And at a depth that I didn't know I was able to do, I took step one and surrendered her to her life. My brother did commit suicide. He was drunk and he committed suicide. And I saw that tear up my whole family because at the time I was the only one that was in recovery. My niece and nephew had been in and out. And I saw what suicide does. And I also saw it destroyed my mother. My mother never got better after that because she had no program. But I had people in this fellowship that came to me and told me things about suicide and alcoholism. That my brother did the best he knew how because he took himself out. He could not stand the pain anymore. He couldn't stand who he was hurting, and he took himself out. And a man of the cloth told me, don't worry about this. God understands suicide, because I was so worried about his internal soul. God forgives because he knows the illness. And I was able to take step one on my brother's death. And because of that experience, I knew if my daughter destroys her life, I will be okay. I will be in pain forever, I'm quite sure, because it's still painful about my brother, but that I will survive. And I had to get to that point of letting go. My daughter got 3.5 years of sobriety, built back up. She's had magnificent sponsorship. She's had magnificent everything. She's had the gift this program gives. She moved from California over to Phoenix last May, or no, I guess, I don't know when she moved over there. Anyway, she'd been there a few months. And in last May, she called me late one night. She said, Mother, are you sitting down? I said, what? You know, if an alcoholic says you're sitting down late at night, there's a what. She said, I just went to Vegas and got married. I said, to who? I had no idea she's even dating anybody. She told me who it was, young man back in Texas. In fact, it was my son's, one of his old buddies, and they'd run off, got married. He lived in Austin. I said, what, are y'all going to stay there in Phoenix? And she said, no, we've got to hurry up and get back to Texas before his parole officer finds out he's out of the state. Well, that was last May. And you could just see, you could just see the madness. I could see her madness. Pretty soon she lost her car. She couldn't find a job. Of course, he doesn't work. He drinks. He's an alcoholic. She got a car repossessed. Right after that, he got his car repossessed. And then, I kept hearing this stuff. 3 weeks ago, she called me. I was going to be here in Dallas a couple of weeks ago, and she called me. And she said, I need to tell you something because I'm going to see you this weekend. You'll know anyway, but I've been drinking. And she says, I spent the night last night in the emergency room, and I've had several stitches, and I've got contusions, and you're going to see me, so I just want to prepare you. I said, okay. And I just hung up. Called my sponsor. Devastated. One more time. Just, God, dog. Not because she drank. I was expecting that. Because you can't have those kind of actions and not drink. I was expecting it. But the fact that she had been beat up, I was devastated over that. It's a reflection of how she feels about herself. I'm aware of that because I've heard open AA meetings. But the overwhelming guilt, she grew up seeing me beat up all the time. It is not unusual for her. And that she would allow herself to be beat up by a drunk because she saw me be beat up by a drunk. And I was just... And I called my sponsor, just really. And it's step one. And it is all those things. And I was reminded. And she said, why don't you get out that page you like so much? And within a few hours... I want you to know I was okay. Within a few hours. Now that's because I have read this page and know the difference between acceptance and submission. It's because I've talked to so many people, because I sit in the rooms and look across and hear somebody else telling my story, and it's my mirror. And I know there's absolutely nothing I can do about this young woman. She's an adult. And there's absolutely nothing I can do about her. Nothing. My sponsor says your only responsibility is to pray for her and to love her. It's God's responsibility to change her and to control her path. So step one, talk to her Tuesday. I call my sponsor every morning at Tuesday. Every week on Tuesday morning. She says, so how's step one going today? She didn't even ask me where I was at or how I was feeling. She said to me, how's step one going today? Reminding me where I'm at. How glorious. How glorious. Now, if it was just left there, if that was it, it's pretty scary. If only you're powerless, it's pretty scary. But then God steps in and gives us step two. That there's going to be some power to this surrender. My son is still drinking. He's still in, I love us. He called one time and he was going to get married. And to who? And he had been sick. He was out on the parking lot of a honky-tonk, and he was out there sick, throwing up, and this young girl come by and said, do you need some help? And they got married, and they were married for a while, but he divorced her, and then he got another gal that could help him, and they lived together for a long time, and then that's gone, and now he's lived with another one from a good girl. I like this one. He lived with her for a long time, and that just didn't work, so he's now in between women. But I'm not to worry, because there is umbilical cords in every bar, and he goes to bars a lot, so not to worry. And I had to watch him grow up and accept the fact that I could not do anything about him with his drinking father. And he has been damaged. And I made amends to him, and I said to him not too long ago how painful it was to watch my children. I said, I know there's nothing to do with this, but it's very painful for me to watch you kids not have a nice home because you never had the experience of a nice home. You don't know what marriage is about. And I really regret that for you. I know you have your path, but I regret that. He said, Mom, we all got choices. He's got a lot of good sense. He grew up around my telephone and around all of us. Susan has a son, and I have a son. They're the same age, and they used to just hang out together. And you know that they heard this stuff, and hopefully they got enough to survive. He's doing well. He's bought him a horse, and he's a little roper, and he goes all over the country, and that's his thing, is heading and healing, and he does fine. My stepdaughter, I just adore my stepdaughter. She's a good girl. She got 14 years sobriety last December. We brought her in our home with a little son that she had out of wedlock, and we were great grandparents, and we've had to surrender her to her life and let her be. And she is doing extremely well. She's married, she's got another little kid, she's in Norman, doing great. I had to surrender many parts of her life. If you surrender all these kids, and you surrender your husbands, and you surrender your mamas and daddies, what's left then? Step two. Can you believe the power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity? Step two is to relax, says the sponsor to the man in the AA's 12 and 12. If you don't have an AA's 12 and 12, I highly recommend it. It is so good. It's excellent. It talks about people who will not start to believe in a higher power. One of them is the belligerent people. Some of us are so belligerent that we cannot or will not believe in anything other than ourselves. Page 26, some of you got your books out there. Page 26, the sponsor's talking to him. No, let's look on page 25. Having reduced us to a state of absolute helplessness, now you declare that none but a higher power can remove our obsessions. Some of us won't believe in God, others can't, and still others who do believe in God exist have no faith whatever He will perform miracles. Yes, you've got us over a barrel. Where do we go from here? And one of the things that would stop us from believing in the power is we're being belligerent. On page 26, it's the one who, consider the next one who had once had faith but has lost it. And on page 29, the intellectual self-sufficient one who believes that they are smart enough they don't need a higher power. And then on page 31 at the bottom of the page, the guy or gal who's full of faith but still reeking of alcohol. What about him? He believes he is devout. His religion observance is scrupulous. This is what it is. This touched me the first time I read it. He still believes in God but suspects that God doesn't believe in him. Now, how many of us come like that? A bunch of us. Under alcoholism, we have no choice after a bit, do we? We know what's going to happen to us. We're going to get here. Sponsor's talking to a newcomer on page 26, and he says, how do I do this? How do I get a power greater than myself? So first of all, you have to relax. You won't have to work at it very hard. Listen to 3 statements the sponsor's saying. First, AA, or Al-Anon, does not demand you believe anything. All the 12 steps are but suggestions. Second, to get sober or to have some serenity, to stay sober, you don't have to swallow all of step 2 right now. 3, all you really need is an open mind. And it says the minute, on page 27, the minute I stopped arguing, I could begin to see and feel. Right there, step 2 gently and very gradually began to infiltrate my life. Now listen to what it says. The minute I stopped arguing. Not necessarily arguing with your sponsor, but arguing in your own head. How many of you in your own head have argued this in God? I believe in God, but God may not believe in me. How many times have we thought that and believed that? So, for a higher power for many of us, my story, my first higher power was that group. I came in and started believing the group for whatever reason. It seemed as if when I walked in there, my life changed. It